Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. All praise and glory is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and may His peace and blessing be on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, upon his family and on the Sahaba. Alhamdulillah, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for allowing us to reach this month of Ramadan. It is truly a blessing, and we want to use this time in useful matters. Of course, that involves increase in worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that involves an increase in recitation of the Quran, and of course it also involves in things like these durus and halaqas, coming together, reminding ourselves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His worship, and especially trying to learn about the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What is the Seerah exactly? When we talk about the Seerah, it literally means a journey. And when we're talking about it in this context, it means a journey through life. And of course, the most important human being to ever live was the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So whenever someone refers to the Seerah, automatically they know who they're referring to. They're referring to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And after knowledge of Allah, knowing who our Creator is, knowing what our purpose in life is, to worship Him and to obey Him, after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most essential knowledge there is that of knowing the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, knowing who he is on a personal level, knowing the different things that he went through in his life, knowing the different sacrifices he made, knowing the revelation that came to him, all these different things. What are some of the qualities of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Without a doubt, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes him as a mercy to the worlds. He is Rahmatul Alameen. He is a mercy to the world. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also describes him as the best example for all of humanity. Out of the billions and billions and billions of humans who ever lived, without a doubt, he was the best human being to ever live. In an authentic narration, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us that none of you have pure iman, 100% pure iman, until he loves me more than any other thing that he loves. Any other family, any siblings, parents, children. A sign of pure and perfect iman is that a person first and foremost loves Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and after Allah, he loves the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam before anything. And then the question arises, how can we love someone at this level if we don't even know about them? If we don't know about their life's journey, if we don't know their characteristics, what they look like, what they went through, the message that they came with. If we don't know these things, it is not possible to love an individual at this level. Another important quality of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam is that he will be the one who intercedes for us on the Day of Judgment. On Yawm al-Qiyamah, droves of people will be going to different prophets throughout time. They will go to Adam alayhi salam, they will go to Musa alayhi salam, they will go to Isa alayhi salam, asking for some help. Help us in this situation. And of course, every one of them will say, this is not for me. They will be worried about their own selves. They'll be worried about themselves, what's going to happen to me, even the prophets. And the humans, they will then go to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he will say that this is for me, this is my job, this is my job. And he will intercede for us on our behalf in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He will fall in prostration and he will say words of praise that he does not know. He did not know at that moment when he said this to the Sahaba. In that moment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will inspire him to say these words of praise, and he will make intercession for us. Without a doubt, he was the chosen one, the final messenger, our teacher, our guide, our leader. And for us, his honor is before any other creation. Of course, we love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first and foremost, but amongst creation, his honor comes before anything. And to reach that level of love, again, we have to emphasize, it is extremely important to love the Messenger ﷺ and to know what his life was about. So inshallah, that's what we're going to do in this Ramadan. It's going to be a total of 8 lectures. That's not enough time to go over the entire Seerah. That's not enough time at all. So we'll be paraphrasing some things. Some stories might be omitted, so we won't be able to go in an exhaustive nature, but we'll go over all or most of the main things throughout his life. In terms of sources used for these lectures, we used a very famous book called The Sealed Nectar. This was a book that won a competition in 1979 for the best Seerah book in the world. It is a very in-depth work, and of course we're not going to be able to go through all of it, but that will be used as a general guide for this series. And of course, the sources that the author himself used is the works by Ibn Hisham, some of the original collections of Seerah works, and also Zad al-Ma'ad, work by Ibn al-Qayyim rahmahullah. So that's some of the sources that the author himself referred to. Other sources will be used at times as well, from online lectures or articles, and sometimes I will try to mention wherever I use that. And for the most part, the authenticity of the events in the Seerah are good. They're hasan, they're good. But one thing we have to understand is that the level of diligence that was taken in hadith sciences, that level was not taken in Seerah. So the authors of the Seerah, original Seerah books, they just wanted to get a full picture of what exactly happened. Of course, the sources were good for the most part. But again, that level of diligence was not taken for the Seerah itself. Now finally, before we actually begin the life of the Messenger ﷺ itself, we have to backtrack. We have to look at the origins of humanity itself. Because of course, he is the most important human to ever live. So we have to go backtrack and we have to see the origins of humanity. And some of these things are very straightforward, but for some of the people in the audience, especially the youngsters, it's important to emphasize some of these things. Tens of thousands of years ago, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows exactly when, but Allah decided to create Adam alayhi salam for the first time. And He creates Adam alayhi salam as a Khalifa on earth, as a vice-regent or a successor on earth. These are creations of Allah that will inherit the earth. They will live upon the earth, they will worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this will be their home. And they are the inheritors of this earth. He created humans for His worship and to be tested. As we all know, humans are given free will. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran that He has not created jinn or mankind for any other reason but His worship. And along with that worship comes tests in life. That is a product of our free will. We know the story of Adam alayhi salam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates him from clay. He creates his wife Hawa, and Shaitan is their clear enemy. He refuses to bow down in respect to Adam alayhi salam when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands him, and he is cast out from Jannah. After some time, he whispers to Adam alayhi salam and his wife, and he urges them to eat from the tree, eat the fruit from the tree that they were not supposed to eat. They make this mistake, and of course they make this mistake not out of arrogance or wanting to disobey Allah, but because it was their human mistake, it was within their human nature. They made this mistake, and they ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness. And Allah forgives them, but they are sent upon the earth. They are exited from Jannah, and they are put upon the earth to live their lives and to act as vice-regents on this earth, as was their purpose in life. When they are created and when they are put on earth, for generations and generations, there was only one religion, the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tawheed was pure on the earth. People made mistakes. They committed sins. The first murder happened within the first generation. Other sins happened, but shirk never happened. At this time, shirk had not happened before. Generations after generations passed, and some of the ulama say that this was tens of thousands of years, or thousands of years between Adam alayhi salam and Nuh alayhi salam. When the time of Nuh alayhi salam came, this was a time when shirk had started to begin. This is a time when humanity is at its low point now. So Muslims or humans went from believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, worshipping Allah alone, to worshipping idols. And how did this start? This actually started when five very pious humans after Adam alayhi salam They died back to back to back. And these were humans that used to give charity, they used to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all the time, they used to call towards good and forbid evil. And Shaitan came up with a scheme. This is his opportunity to trick humans, to make them come towards something that is very grave and evil. Shaitan comes to some of the humans and he whispers to them that these humans that we have just lost, that you have just lost, these really pious humans, as time goes by, you're going to forget about them. You're going to forget about these people, you're going to forget they existed. And you're not going to be able to use them as a memory to do good. So I urge you, make pictures of them. Make pictures of them in memory. So every time you see their pictures, you will be motivated to do good. And of course, Shaitan is patient with his schemes. This was the first step in his scheme. The first generation that made these pictures, they did as they intended, as in just to remind themselves of being good, of worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, reminding themselves. But as the generations passed, this memory was lost. What humans started to do, they started to worship these pictures and these idols. They forgot what the original purpose was. When they look at these pictures and these idols, they say, oh, our ancestors probably worshipped them, so we're going to worship them. We're going to use them as a means to come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this was the beginning of shirk. This is how shirk began. And eventually, shirk had overrun the entire earth. And just to make sure that everybody understands, shirk is associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the greatest sin any human can ever do. This sin alone is worse than murder. Associating partners with Allah. Worshipping something other than Allah. This is the greatest sin anyone can ever do. After thousands of years of shirk spreading upon the earth, finally, the first messenger was sent. Before this, prophets were sent. And some of the ulama say that the distinction between prophets and messengers is that a prophet is sent to a nation in general that already believes in Allah. They are sent to rectify the affairs of the people. Wherever they're going wrong or they might be going close to something wrong, the prophet rectifies their affair. A messenger or a rasul is sent to a nation of kuffar, a nation of non-believers. And their job is to call these people back to their fitrah, back to the oneness of Allah, back to Tawheed, back to worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the first ever messenger was Nuh alayhi salam. So Nuh alayhi salam, obviously we know the story. He built the ship. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the command after 800 years of preaching. He gave him the command to build a ship, and a great flood came and destroyed all of humanity. And Nuh alayhi salam only had about 80 followers, 80 something followers. And from him and their progeny, mankind reset once again. This was a low point in mankind, and then humanity reset once again. After this, many major nations, almost all major nations, received a prophet. It is said that there are about 124,000 prophets and about 310 plus messengers that were sent throughout humanity. And different nations had different prophets. Perhaps there was a prophet in Africa. Perhaps there was a prophet in North America. This is thousands of years ago. Perhaps there was a prophet in East Asia. Perhaps there was a prophet in South America. All over the place. Sometimes their laws and their sharia was different, but the one message of Tawheed was the same. That was universal. Every prophet came with that same message. Sometimes the rules and laws were different, but again, the Tawheed was always the same. Again, after centuries, thousands of years after Nuh alayhi salam, humanity started to go towards shirk once again. Shirk had become prevalent once more. And this is when Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam was born, 4,000 years ago, around 2100 BCE, around this time. And we don't know the exact date, but just over 4,000 years ago. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose Ibrahim alayhi salam to be his messenger in this time of evil and shirk. And from the line of Ibrahim alayhi salam, the unification of the faith began. Before, when you had prophets on a different continent, all over the place, from the line of Ibrahim alayhi salam, the unification began. We know the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam. We're not going to be able to go in depth. But from his sons, Ismail alayhi salam and Ishaq alayhi salam, two great nations came. From his son Ishaq alayhi salam, Bani Israel came. And from his son Ismail alayhi salam, the Arabs came. And from the line of Ishaq alayhi salam, we have great prophets like Musa alayhi salam, like Dawood alayhi salam, like Isa alayhi salam. And from the line of Ismail alayhi salam, subhanAllah, we only have one. But that one was the most important of all prophets. And that is our messenger, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Going to the origins of the Arabs. The word Arab literally means desert or barren land. And there's mainly three types of Arabs. We have extinct tribes of Arabs. These are the nations of Ad and Thamud. These were from thousands and thousands of years ago. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had destroyed these nations and they had never come back. Then we have the pure Arabs, or they're also called Qahtani Arabs. These are from southern Arabia, from Yemen. And then we have the Adnani Arabs. These are the descendants of Ismail alayhi salam. When Ismail alayhi salam came to Mecca, he was raised by his mother in this land. And of course, the well of Zamzam had come out and they had nourished off of this. Some southern tribes had come and settled in this land. They had asked permission of Ismail alayhi salam's mother Hajar to stay in this land and settle this land. And this was the tribe of Jurhum. And from this tribe, Ismail alayhi salam married into. So he married a daughter of this tribe. And from that line, we have the Adnani Arabs, and that's where they spread out from. And of course, the line of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it comes from this same line, from the line of Ismail alayhi salam. Now, in terms of the religious situation, of course, the Prophet Ismail alayhi salam was also a messenger. When he preached to these people, his new tribe, this tribe that he had assimilated into, he preached to them the message of Allah, the message of Tawheed, and they had accepted. They had accepted this message. And for generations and generations, they believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They did not commit shirk. They upheld the rituals that were commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to Ibrahim alayhi salam and his sons. They upheld these commandments. But after some time, again, shirk started to come back into society. A man named Amr ibn Luhay, who was well known amongst the Arabs, he traveled to Syria one time. And this is centuries after Ismail alayhi salam. When he went to Syria, he saw how big their palaces were, how much riches they had, all the food they had, everything they had. And he also saw that they used to worship idols. So he correlated these things. Out of his ignorance, out of his jahiliyyah, he correlated these things. And he said, okay, maybe because they're worshiping these idols, they're having extra barakah, they're having extra blessings. So we should innovate this into our religion as well. We should begin this in our religion as well. So he requested them, and he took back an idol from Syria back to Mecca, and he placed it within the Kaaba. And he commanded the people that if you want extra blessings, if you want to have more innovation, and you want to have good innovation, and you want to be like these great nations in Iraq and Syria, then worship these idols and you will have lots and lots of wealth and lots of blessings. Wanting the dunya, wanting more and more of the dunya, many people fell into this trap. And once more, shirk and idolatry and evil crept into the lands of Allah. Once more. It came to a point where the Kaaba was filled with idols. What was once a house of worship built by Ibrahim alayhi salam and his son, it was now infiltrated by these evil idols. And through the centuries, idolatry had taken over Arabia completely. Completely it had been taken over. Talking about the religious situation of the rest of the world, fire worship was at a peak amongst the Zoroastrians or the Majusis of Persia. Fire worship, sun worship, it was at its peak. And how jahil were their kings. The kings of Persia had become so arrogant and jahil in their arrogance, they used to even marry their own sisters. They used to marry their sisters to keep their bloodlines pure. This is the level of jahiliyyah that they went into. And of course, in the Christian realm, Christianity had been extremely corrupted by this point. The false belief of Trinity had become widespread. As we know, in the Council of Nicaea, around 300 CE. Before then, there were lots and lots of different sects of Christians. And of course, amongst those sects of Christians were true followers of Isa alayhi salam. They used to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. They used to not say that Isa alayhi salam was the son of Allah. They didn't say this stuff. But by the time the Nicene Creed happened, the church and the emperor of Rome, he had forced all Christians to believe in Trinity, to believe that Isa alayhi salam is the son of God. A'udhu billah. They forced people to believe in these things. And only a handful at this time, a handful of true followers of Isa alayhi salam, maybe less than 100 were alive on earth at this time. So without a doubt, this was a time of complete ignorance, a time of complete darkness and evil upon the earth. Shirk was so common, ignorance was common, injustice was common. And the world suffered in the dunya as well. Some scientists and historians say that around this time, a volcanic eruption had erupted around Iceland. And that eruption was so severe that the clouds and the smoke from that eruption had blocked out the sun. For a couple years, for 2 to 3 years, the sun could not be seen. And the crops failed. This led to crop failures. This led to diseases, especially a very well-known disease called Justinian's plague, which had killed 1/5 of the population of the Roman Empire. That's how severe this darkness became. So the world was in a figurative, religious sense of darkness, where they were completely drowning in their shirk and their ignorance. And the world was also in a literal darkness. In a literal darkness. The world was dark. They could not see the sun for years. And from this darkness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed a light upon the earth. He illuminated this darkness with a light, with the light of our Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And He placed this light to save mankind from darkness and to remind the people once again of what their mission on this earth is, and to once and for all rid ignorance and idolatry from this world. And now we move into the birth of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the greatest human to ever live, for whom our mothers and fathers are sacrificed. We love him with all our heart. And this is the beginning of knowing his story. It is reported that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born in 570 CE or 571 CE, in the month of Rabiul Awwal. He was born into the tribe of Quraysh, which was the most powerful tribe of Arabia. This tribe was responsible for the affairs of Hajj and affairs of the Kaaba and protecting this holy land. And even to them, despite their ignorance, they knew how holy and how important this land was. His father was Abdullah ibn Abdul Muttalib, and Abdul Muttalib, his grandfather, was the chief of Quraysh. So the Messenger ﷺ was born into a house of nobility. He was born into a house of nobility and honor and respect. His mother was Aminah, and she was also from Quraysh. When the Messenger ﷺ was born, some very notable and powerful events happened, because this is a significant event, in fact the most significant event in human history. The most significant birth in human history happened right now, because as Allah's chosen, He was going to be the one who was going to rid the world of shirk. He was going to rid the world of ignorance. He was the beloved of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the leader of all the prophets, the leader of humanity. When he was born, it is said, a light shined that could be seen all the way in the palaces of Syria. And when he was born, 14 balconies at the Persian emperor's palace collapsed at his birth. They just collapsed. And the sacred fire of the Majusis or the Zoroastrians went out. This was a fire that none of them could remember when it was out. For all they knew, this was a fire that was burning from the start of time. That's how they used to see this fire that they used to worship. At his birth, this fire went out. And some churches around Lake Sawa in Iraq collapsed. And of course, not all of these are fully authenticated to the level of Sahih,
but inshallah it is okay to recount these stories. It is reported that the Prophet ﷺ lost his father before he was even born. Some narrations say that it was 2 months after he was born, but most of them say that it was before he was even born. His father had gone to Medina, which was at the time called Yathrib, to buy dates and to bring them to Mecca, and along the way he had passed away. So the Prophet ﷺ was basically born an orphan. And in this society, that is a huge blow to someone's status, to not have a father. Because in this society, your tribe, your father, your grandfather, your ancestors, your bloodline meant everything. Nothing else matters. What matters is your bloodline, your father, your grandfather. And because of this tribalism, so many wars were fought. Racism was rampant. Injustice was rampant. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would keep the honor of His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When his father passed away, of course, his mother would take care of him, and his grandfather and his uncles, they were very loving of him. They loved the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because of course there's a boy born to their tribe. As was the custom of the Arabs at the time, the city Arabs, they believed that the life in the city had made people soft, or it makes them weak. So it was from their custom that whenever a baby was born, they would invite some tribes from the Bedouins, the desert-dwelling Arabs. Those Arabs that were not considered to be too civilized, but they were very good in their language of Arabic, and they were very good in their toughness. So the families, they always wanted to make sure that our child grows up strong. So this was a tradition that Bedouin families would come. They would make negotiations with the families of different nobles. They would pay them a sum of money, and then they would take their baby to be raised in the desert so that they could grow up to be strong. Now, because the Messenger ﷺ, he was an orphan, nobody wanted to take him. Because he did not have a father, who's going to pay us? Nobody's going to pay us. So because of this, all the different families, they went, they got the babies, and they left. But there was one family, the family of Halima, and they themselves were very poor. They did not have a lot of wealth to them. She barely had enough milk for her own child. They barely had any animals to provide for them. They were a very, very, very poor family. They had seen the Prophet ﷺ, but they wanted to get a richer family's baby first. At the end of the day, they were not able to secure any baby. So they decided, let's just go ahead and take this baby. Let's take this, the son of Abdullah. And the story is recounted by Halima herself. She said, "It was a year of drought and famine, and we had nothing to eat. I rode on a brown mule. We also had with us an old she-camel. By Allah, we could not get even a drop of milk. We could not have a wink of sleep during the night, for the child kept crying because of hunger, their own child. There was not enough milk in my breast, and even the she-camel had nothing to feed him. We used to constantly pray for rain and immediate relief. At length we reached Mecca looking for children to suckle. Not even a single woman amongst us accepted when Allah's Messenger ﷺ was offered to her. As soon as they were told that he was an orphan, they refused him. We had fixed our eyes on the reward that we would get from the child's father. An orphan! What were his grandfather and mother likely to do? So we refused to accept him because of that. Every woman who came with me got a suckling infant, and when we were about to depart, I said to my husband, by Allah, I do not like to go back along with other women without an infant. I should go to that orphan, and I must take him. He said, there is no harm in doing so, and perhaps Allah might bless us through him. So I went and took him, because there was simply no other alternative left for me but to take him. When I lifted him in my arms and returned to my place, I put him on my breast, and to my great surprise, I found enough milk in it. He drank to his heart's content, and so did his foster brother, and both of them went to sleep, although my baby had not been able to sleep the previous night. My husband then went to the she-camel to milk it, and to his astonishment, he found plenty of milk. He milked it, and we drank to our fill, and enjoyed a sound sleep during the night. The next morning, my husband said, by Allah, O Halima, you must understand that you have got a blessed child. And I replied, by the grace of Allah, I hope so. Subhanallah. As soon as the Messenger ﷺ in his infant state, he came into their care, the blessings began. They could not count the blessings that came to them. Even when they went back to their settlement back in the desert, the land that they used to inhabit started to grow different plants. Greenery started to come into this barren land. These were the blessings that were associated with the Messenger ﷺ. The blessings were so great that they did not even want to give up this child anymore. That our fortunes have come with this child, how can we give up this child? So usually what was tradition is that the families would give up these children after 2 to 3 years. But each time they would go back to Mecca for the Prophet ﷺ to meet his mother, they would make some excuse. Like, oh, he needs more time. He needs to be with us more. Just for their own benefit, because they acknowledge that this child is special. There is something special to this child. One time, when he was with his foster family, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was playing with his foster siblings in the desert. And as he was playing with them, suddenly, a man in white clothing and black hair approaches them with a very awesome look. When they look, it's a state of awe when you look at this person. He starts walking towards the children, and the other children start running away. They get scared of this person. Like, what is this person with pure white clothes and jet black hair? What's he doing here? And the Prophet ﷺ is stuck in awe. He's basically frozen, looking at this man. The children run away and look at this from a distance. They're looking at what's happening. They see that the man grabs the Prophet ﷺ, and at the time he is 4 to 5 years old. He grabs him and he places him on the ground. And he is still frozen, he can't move. He can't do anything, he's in a state of shock. And the children witness the man opening his shirt and crossing his hand across his chest and entering and taking his heart out and taking out a small black dot from his heart. He closed his heart again, he puts it in place. And this hadith is recounted in Sahih Muslim. The children run back. They run back after telling their parents. First they go to their parents and they say, oh, our parents, that man has murdered him. He's murdered him. He's killed. And at that time they got scared. They're, oh my God, like this child that we're supposed to be protecting, Quraysh will not leave us alone if anything happens to this child. They run to the Messenger ﷺ, and he's still in the ground in shock. And they see a scar across his chest. And Anas ibn Malik, who had recounted this hadith, he said that I saw this scar myself with my own eyes. Even up until the ages of 60s, they could see the evidence of this mark. And this was the beginning of his purification. Of course, through his free will, he was the best of humans. He was the best of humans. But to elevate him even more, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had sent the angel Jibreel alayhi salam to purify him even more, to save him from every shadow of shaitan, to save him completely. When this happened, they quickly took him back to Mecca and they gave him back to his mother. Because they said, we are not responsible for this anymore. If anything happens to him, we cannot deal with the consequences. So he comes back under the care of his mother, Amina. And under her care, wanting to honor her late husband's memory, she decides to go on a journey to Medina or Yathrib at the time. Abdul Muttalib, Amina, and the Prophet ﷺ, they all go on this journey. Along the way, when they go to Medina, and on the way back, the Prophet's mother falls severely ill on the way, and along the journey she passes away. And now the Messenger ﷺ has become a complete orphan. No father, no mother. And he is just maybe 5 or 6 years old at this time. Now he comes under the care of his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib. He takes great care of his grandchild. He sometimes gives him more honor than his own children. He takes very good care of his child, but eventually, at the age of 8, even his grandfather passed away. So hardship after hardship after hardship, even at a young age. He loses his father before he's even born. He loses his mother at the age of 6. He loses his grandfather. And now finally he's under the protection of his uncle Abu Talib. And Abu Talib was not very rich, but he was very loving. And he took great care of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Up until his death, he took care of him. In terms of the occupation that the Prophet ﷺ had during his his life. When he was a child and a teenager, he was known to be a shepherd. So he would take the flock of different noble families and he would shepherd them and bring them back. And that was his means of earning halal rizq. Later on, when he went into his 20s and his early adulthood, he started trading. As was the tradition of Quraysh. They were all merchants. So he also fell into this tradition. Before another incident from his childhood, when he was just a teenager, his uncle Abu Talib took him on an expedition to Syria to perform a business transaction. When he reached that place, a monk who was very knowledgeable in his scriptures, he saw the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he approached Abu Talib, and he approached the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a child, and he said, "This child that you have, he is going to be the leader of all humanity. He is going to bring a message of truth and a message of mercy. This child will be a leader of all humanity." And Abu Talib said, "How do you know this? He's just a child." He says, "The signs are there. The signs are there in our scriptures. And I am knowledgeable in these signs. And this child, mark my words, he will be a prophet of God." Later on, when he started doing trading and in his business of merchants, he came to be known by Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha. She was a very rich woman, and because of the lack of safety for women at that time, she used to hire different men to perform different business transactions for her. But every time she would have them perform business transactions, they would cheat her. She would not get the full amount that is due to her. So she came to find out about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his honesty. So she sent one of her servants to talk to him and make an agreement so that he could sell on her behalf. He goes, he does the business transaction for her, and she gets an immense amount of profit. And her servant also tells her how honest and how truthful he is, that he is completely an honest man. She was extremely impressed by his honesty, to the point that she wanted to marry him. Now she was a very coveted woman. Men of Quraysh wanted to marry her because of her wealth and because of her lineage. She was a very noble woman, a woman of respect. And she herself was so affected by his honesty that she wanted to marry him. She sends her friend to talk to the Prophet ﷺ, and of course the Prophet ﷺ sends his uncle to talk to her uncle, and the marriage is established. The Prophet ﷺ has 6 children from Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha, 4 daughters and 2 sons. As time goes by, the reputation of the Prophet ﷺ grows. He is known to be a very honest person, a truthful person, an honorable person. If you leave a secret with him, he's going to keep that secret. If you leave any amana with him, he's going to keep that amana. He is known to all of his community as a trustworthy person. When he starts to approach the age of 40, when he's about 38, 39 years old, he starts pondering over existence. He starts pondering over the state of society. He starts pondering over ways to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One thing to understand is that the Prophet ﷺ and all the prophets, they were ma'soom. They never committed sins, and they did not commit shirk at all. That's not even in the question. Shirk is impossible for them to commit. Now, he was sickened by shirk. He hated shirk. He hated idolatry. But he did not know a course of action to take action against them. He did not know in his space what he could do. So he spent this time pondering on how he himself can perfect his character, how he himself can come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and just thinking about ways to improve society as a whole. As time went by, some scholars say that a time of 2 to 3 years went by, where he was visiting different areas of Mecca, different hills of Mecca. And one very specific hill, the cave of Hira, he used to visit this cave very often. Very often he used to visit this cave. And one time, as he's in his meditation, as he's in his worship and his pondering, in the night of Ramadan, the angel Jibreel alayhi salam finally appears to him, and he brings the revelation to him. He brings the first ever revelation to him, and he reveals to him that he is the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is one of the most important moments in human history. In our lives, in our history, this is one of the most important moments. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our creator, sends the best angel to the best human to ever live and reveals the first words of revelation, sealing the fate of humanity, sealing the fate of Muslims on earth, sealing the fact that shirk, the fight against shirk, will end now. The truth will be revealed now. As the angel Jibreel alayhi salam, he comes into the cave, and the Prophet ﷺ becomes startled. He grabs the Prophet ﷺ by his arm, and he reads to him, "Iqra," read. And the Prophet ﷺ replies to him, "I can't read. I'm unlettered. I don't know how to read and write." He grabs him again, and he says, "Read." And again, the Prophet ﷺ recites the same thing. He says, "I don't know how to read. What should I read?" And once more he grabs him with sternness, and he says, "Read, Iqra." And then he reveals, the first verses revealed to us. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. These first verses are recited to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Read in the name of your Lord who created man from a clinging substance. Read, and your Lord is the most generous, who taught by the pen, taught man that which he knew not. SubhanAllah, look at the wisdom of this first revelation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding mankind, recite in the name of your Lord who created you. Know where you came from. Know who created you. Know who you are supposed to worship. And created man from a blood clot, a clinging substance, an insignificant thing. Know your own insignificance. Know what you came from. And read, and your Lord is most generous. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding us, your Lord is generous. He loves to forgive. He loves to give. He loves to bestow His bounty upon His slaves. He did not remind us about His wrath in these first revelations. He reminded us about His mercy. And He says, who taught by the pen, taught man that which he knew not. Emphasizing the importance of knowledge. This knowledge of the Quran, knowledge of the Sunnah, knowledge revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Reminding us that we know nothing on ourselves. We are completely dependent upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are dependent upon His revelation. We are dependent upon His help. He reminds us of these things in these first few revelations, in these first few ayat. When the angel Jibreel alayhi salam leaves, the Prophet ﷺ is in a state of shock. He is trembling with fear. This is the first time he has interacted with Jibreel alayhi salam since he was a 5-year-old boy. He is trembling and shaking, and he doesn't know what just happened. He can't even believe what just happened. He gets his things, and as soon as possible, as soon as he could, he rushes home. He rushes home to his wife, Khadija radiallahu ta'ala. And he tells her what just happened. He tells her what just happened. And subhanAllah, look at the level of Khadija radiallahu ta'ala. She reminds him of his level in society. She reminds him that you do good to others. You feed the poor. You stand up for those who are oppressed. You uphold the ties of kinship. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not dishonor you. Do not worry. She reassures him. And some scholars say that she was the first believer. She was the first one to believe in the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because she knew her husband was not a liar. She knew her husband would only tell the truth. She tells the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, my cousin Waraqa, he has knowledge of scriptures. He has knowledge of these angels, and he has knowledge of scriptures of the Christians and scriptures of the Jews. So we will go to him and we will recount these events to him. We will discuss with him, and we will see what he has to say. Sometime later, they go to Waraqa, and they tell him the signs of what happened. And he says, by Allah, this was the same angel sent to Musa alayhi salam. By Allah, you are a prophet of Allah. You are a prophet of Allah. All the signs indicate that you are truly a messenger. And how I wish I was a young man. How I wish I was a young man that I could support you in this mission. For a time of hardship is about to come. I wish I was with you when your people throw you out. And the Prophet ﷺ replies, my people will throw me out. They'll throw me out of my own home, my own house. And he replies to him, every prophet who came with a similar message as yours, he was treated the same way. He was treated negatively. He was treated harshly because they spoke the truth and they only feared Allah. So your time of hardship begins now. Prepare yourself. Your journey is about to begin now. And again, how I wish I was a young man and I could accompany you on this mission. And subhanAllah, a few days later, Warqa dies. He passes away. And some scholars say that he was also one of the first believers. That he believed in the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He believed in the messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And with this, we end the first episode in this series of the life of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Look at the significance of this event. From the Creator witnessing upon his favorite angel, delivering the revelation to his favorite human being, from that cave in the middle of nowhere, the barren desert, we are here today, 1400 years later, almost 2 billion humans, 2 billion Muslims upon this earth, billions of Muslims throughout history, from that significant event in that cave. Look how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored His messenger and honored this deen. From that interaction, we grew to the moment we are here today, in foreign lands, across thousands of miles away from Mecca, preaching the message of Islam, preaching the sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is a great honor upon us, and this is a great honor that we are slaves of Allah, and that we are the followers of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Inshallah, we will conclude here for today, and for the next time, next Saturday at 4 p.m. we will continue the early part of the da'wah, the early part of the revelation, how the Messenger ﷺ preached to the Sahaba, how he preached to his family, and how Islam spread from Mecca. All praise and glory is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us, to guide us, to put us upon the straight path. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase the love in our hearts for the Messenger ﷺ, and increase the love in our hearts for the message of Islam. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be praised, and may His peace and blessing be upon Prophet ﷺ, upon his family, upon his Sahaba.